Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of the Grim Dawn Newcomer's Guide. Today we're going to be venturing out in search of the Chthonian Nemesis, Benn'Jhar the Colossal. This will be the second video in a string of Nemesis and Celestial Boss videos, so if this isn't the one you're looking for, stick around and we'll eventually find the one that you need. As always, though, this is a YouTube video, so feel free to give that like button a colossal smash, subscribe to the infinite void of this channel, or embrace your inner chaos with a comment of varying degrees. Right now, we're on to the good stuff. A lot like Val'daran, this Nemesis can be pretty easily encountered with a casual playthrough of normal and elite difficulties. You run into a lot of Chthonian enemies along your story progression, so filling up the infamy bar quickly isn't the hardest thing in the world to do. There is another thing I need to mention that I forgot yesterday as well, but if you're farming Nemesis bosses, they will occasionally drop an item similar to your writs and your mandates. Nemesis bosses drop what's called a warrant on occasion, which can be transferred to other characters and will increase your infamy gain among the faction that you've collected the warrant for. The infamy gain goes up by 50% across all difficulties, so putting a warrant on a new character that you have a specific nemesis in mind for is a pretty logical way to get yourself some big boss attention faster. But back to Benny though, the Colossus can spawn in one of 13 different locations. 4 of those locations are locked in a key dungeon, so for the sake of the video I'm not going to go in there unless absolutely necessary. I'm not going to break my own rule for saving the key dungeon for last, but since I don't want to leave anyone in the dark, just remember the entrance to the Bastion of Chaos is at the northwestern tip of the necropolis, and you'll need to fix a bridge, then spend a skeleton key to get inside of it. Once you're in, Benn'Jhar can spawn in any one of the 4 levels of the dungeon, so make sure to keep an eye on your minimap for his most accurate location. The key dungeon locations for Nemesis spawns are all very linear, so if this is the last place on your list like it should be, you can just check off those areas one by one really easily. Just like that though, we reduced our search area by almost a third with 1 key dungeon waiting until the last go. Moving on to the other locations though, there are going to be a number of these that are actually void rifts that spawn in different locations. For example, the location called the Forsaken Wastes is a void rift located in the Plains of Strife. Plains of Strife is going to be right outside of Fort Icon, so just keep moving along your path, you'll find it eventually. Now the trouble with this is that the Void Rift's physical location will change from session to session. It can have one of 3 locations in the middle of the Plains of Strife map, so 2 are going to be towards the south side and 1 is going to be towards the north side. They're not overly time consuming to check, so don't worry too much about making the rounds, but I will agree it can feel a bit tedious. The good news is that once you're in the Forsaken Wastes, if you don't find Benn'Jhar in them, the next location to check for him is the Obsidian Throne, and the Obsidian Throne is accessed right off the side of the Forsaken Wastes, so that's another 2 locations that are pretty linear and easy to check off the list. The next spawn location is the Depraved Sanctuary, located in Act 1. Now this one can be a bit frustrating because in order to enter the sanctuary you'll need to find the key to it. This is an item called the Strange Key that can drop from cultists in Act 1, and there's a good chance that it'll drop near the door. But if you're having an extremely unlucky day, you may need to venture further out and confiscate some more cultist paraphernalia to find the key. Once you have the key, the sanctuary is impossibly easy to clear, and you should know almost immediately if our big guy is in there. The Tomb of the Watchers is the next location and should sound familiar. That's because this one location is the one where you're going to fight the Loghorian at the end of the base Grim Dawn experience, and all you'll need to do is head north from the Necropolis interior rift gate, and you should see the entrance. Super easy, but the area itself is moderately large, so checking the whole place might take a few minutes. Moving on, we can head over to Sorrow's Bastion with its own rift gate. This location is super small, so it is really easy to clear. And then that may be a good starting point for your Nemesis search if you are looking for Benn'Jhar specifically. Now, the Rift Gate for Sorrow's Bastion is a little bit of a hub for the next set of places that we need to search through, so keep that in mind. This is a little bit of a starting point on this part of the map. You can just start at Sorrow's Bastion and kind of work your way upward and mostly have yourself a linear journey. Now, the village of Dark Vale is the next one on the list, and this can only be accessed from below using the Bloodgrove Rift Gate, which coincidentally is another spawn location for Benn'Jhar, but the village of Dark Vale is north from the Bloodgrove, and if you remember during the story missions, is the area right before the Dark Vale Gate. The village itself isn't difficult to run straight through, and you can easily see the boss on your minimap if he's in this place, but if you didn't manage to find him in the village proper, go on to check the Dark Vale Gate, which is the blood-soaked underground dungeon that's right after the village. Remember, though, once you're in the Dark Vale Gate, you can't just turn around and walk right back out the front door again for some reason. You'll have to Rift Gate out. I'm not sure why that is, but it can be a bit frustrating if you need to go back to the village for some reason. Then finally, we have the Ashen Waste and the Bloodgrove. The Bloodgrove is pretty large itself and has a lot of area to cover, but it does have its own Rift Gate, so getting there isn't ever going to be the issue. Since the Bloodgrove is so big, there are quite a few locations that the Ashen Waste Void Rift can spawn. These two locations are literally on top of each other, but since one is a massive expanse and the other is a random location Void Rift in this place, it can be a nightmare to explore. Well, it can be a nightmare to explore if you are on a time crunch. If you've got plenty of time to waste and that doesn't bother you at all, have fun, go nuts, look in every nook and cranny that you can. Luckily, in this video, we were able to find Benn'Jhar pretty quickly in the Bloodgrove, so there is no need to go infinitely searching, and we can also keep that key dungeon checked off, so we don't have to venture down there. Now that we've got the boss man in our sights, the time has come to see what he can do. Full disclosure, I totally ramboed it and tried to attack him on the first go without completing any of the pre-fight checking that I should have. So I saw a big monster, I attacked a big monster, and then I got a big monster to punch me in the face and kill me. Benn'Jhar, like other Nemesis bosses, will basically be CC immune and life reduction immune as well. Are very, very resistant to life reduction. But beyond that, he has a very high resistance to both poison and chaos damage types. Lucky for me, the vitality and aether resistance aren't as high, nor are his elemental resistances. He also goes into a berserker mode after dropping below 40% health, which at this point he'll get damage absorption, life leech, increased attack and movement speed, more chaos damage, and skill cooldown reduction. Long story short is that the fight will get harder the lower in health he gets. So in terms of abilities and things that Benny can attack you with, the list is pretty small, but still can be very difficult to manage if you get caught unaware. His base attacks are going to deal physical, piercing, chaos, and percentage life damage with some bleeding added on the end for good measure. Suffice it to say, don't get stuck in melee with these enemy unless you have the ability to tank a lot of that stuff. He also has a medium range wave ability that deals fire and chaos damage that will also reduce your health by a percentage and resistances if it hits you. And then the last two abilities that he has are by far the hardest to deal with for me specifically, but they will take you the most by surprise. Or at least, that's how he caught me when I caught him. So Benn'Jhar will ultimately start hitting you with a trap on a very short cooldown. This trap does chaos damage and a reduction to health while also lowering physical and chaos resistance, and the cooldown on this is almost spam levels of low, so be prepared to get stuck a lot. Your entrapment resistances should be as high as you can get them to avoid the duration of the full 3.3 seconds as much as possible. The other problem with this ability is that the setup for his last move is very easy once he traps you. So if you manage to encounter this boss in a tight space, the fight is going to become infinitely harder. At some point, he's going to start to spawn what are called Obsidian Clusters. He can spawn 6 of these at a time, and there can be a maximum of 24 on the field. On their own, they don't do anything, but if you walk near them, they're going to explode. They do this in a really big area, dealing chaos, physical, and fire damage, and with 30% reduction to your health, And then even further beyond that, they are going to deal a massive, massive reduction to your defensive ability. So if you get hit by a bunch of these, they are going to stack up and do lots of damage to you. These are without a doubt the hardest part about dealing with this boss, because staying away from them becomes really hard once he gets to spawning big clusters of them. It's pretty rough. Now, it also hazard a guess that this Nemesis is really difficult for groups to kill, simply because the space that these mines take up are absolutely infuriating. You can see it in the gameplay itself, but they are all over the place, and I'm in the Blood Grove, which is generally speaking a pretty open area. So feel free to kite him to your heart's content, because there is a lot to dodge with this guy. Whew. But hey, if you made it to the end and killed the big guy around all of his little landmines, you have a chance to pick up either his pauldrons or his shoulder guards. Benn'Jhar's pauldrons will give you a health bump and a decent chunk of attack speed with physical and chaos resistance, and then go on to give you +3 to Soleil's Witchfire, Blade Arc, Bone Harvest, and Judgment. Now, obviously, that is 4 different classes there, but some of those can mix and match pretty well, so, take what you get. These are all baseline stats too, so you'll see more on top of that as well when you pick up whatever set that you get, but the other item, the shoulder guards, will give you defensive ability, casting speed, physical and pierce resistance, and then add 3 points into Hellfire Mine, Doom Bolt, and Flames of Ignifar. A little bit less to work with there, but still, it's not something that the right build couldn't fix. That is it, though, everybody. Benn'Jhar the Colossal has been vanquished, and we have obtained part of him to wear around like a trophy, like a really gross, colossal chaos shoulder pad trophy. Ew. Stay tuned next week, at which point we will continue into the remaining 9 Nemesis bosses, then start pushing into the secret celestial super bosses. It's gonna be nuts. You should be there. Either way, I'll see you later. Thanks so much for hanging out. Peace out.